If you see kittens running around in the background, don't worry, they are fully trained and super cute. So you can keep an eye on that.
We've got
Wait,
several mascots this evening, Emma.
we do. Well, we
Some
got
furry
five.
mascots.
I got five of these cheeky buggers, but they're all headed off to their forever homes in a week. So I'm trying to get as much cuddle time with them as possible before they go. So, Ollie, did you want to do the fun announcement thing? I can see it in your face. I could tell it before you even opened your mouth.
You can tell. So
I can.
everyone can hear me? I don't know if my mic's working.
Loud and clear, Ollie.
Awesome. Emma, I think this is an opportunity to put a drum roll into our future recording, but this is our official 350th virtual tasting that we've done. And the reason why it just dawned on me to check, and this is a bit of a full circle special moment for me, is, and I'll share a little bit of evidence. The very first virtual tasting we ever did was with another Brown Forman brand, with Woodford Reserve. So we'd just gone into lockdown, 2020, April 30th, from memory. I had no idea what we were doing. Technology wasn't playing up. 400 people watching me panic to interview our very first international guest and very first guest ever. So don't mind the cowboy hat. I just was telling the guys that was my first and last time ever wearing a prop. So Emma now runs our tastings very much, but yeah, we've had Dr. Rachel Barry, we've done Glenn Glasso, Glenn Dronick, Ben Riak, Woodford, Jack Daniels, and now Old Forester. So it's very cool to tick them all off and to have Andy on to talking us through tonight's 350th virtual tasting. So that's enough from me for now, but I'll hand it back to Emma and Andy to run the show.
Thanks, Ollie.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Well, I will. Couple of stragglers coming in. But I will officially kick this off. And yes, like I said, if you hear noises in the background or you see kittens in the background, please ignore. But officially, welcome everyone. I know it's been another week's break since we had a virtual, but I think this time didn't feel as long because conveniently I was sick and didn't have a voice. So I accidentally timed that really well. I'm all better now, and oh gosh, my God, it's one. It's the biggest girl. She's a pain in my butt, but she's the cutest. Um, but yeah, so I'm all ready to fortify my constitution, as it were, with some American whiskey. This is for medicinal purposes, obviously. Like prohibition. I'm excited for this one. Woodford Reserve was the first whiskey that drew me into the industry, and Old Forester is very much under that umbrella. And tonight we're joined by the wonderful Andy Tsai, who is the brand ambassador for Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, all delicious things, Jack Daniels, and yeah, all the whiskeys under the Brown Forman family. So I'm excited to hear more about the history. And before I quickly hand it over, just housekeeping. You guys might have seen our virtual tasting video that we share in the Zoom link email. That goes over the housekeeping, 6 glasses if you have them. Don't drink and drive being the most important. We love to see tasting notes and questions in the chat. Andy has been studying up and preparing and he's got his own cheat sheet there and everything. So you can ask him all the hard questions. And I'll quickly go through the tasting order verbally for the people at home watching back. We've got the Old Forester USA exclusive, 86 proof. We've got the Statesman is number 2. The 1870 is number 3. The 1910 is whiskey number 4. Whiskey number 5 is the 100 proof number 3 for Whiskey Hunt Australia. Don't tongue twister that. And the last one is the single barrel for Seelback's USA. So I think that's the official stuff concluded from me. So I recommend everyone tuck into whiskey number 1, the USA exclusive. And Andy will start us off with a little bit of chat about the brand.
Thank you, Emma. And thanks, Ollie and team for having me on. It's very appropriate with Brown Forman, who believes so firmly in home places, that I am in our home place right now. I stuck back after work. Everyone has gone home except the cleaner, but I thought I would do the tasting from our HQ in Surrey Hills. And when Brown Forman talks about home places, it's one of those magical things where if you do manage to get overseas to see the distillery, whether it's Jack Daniel's, Woodford Reserve, any of our home places, you're welcomed in like your family, and you're taken through a tour of the most amazing practices that we have across our distilleries. And it's funny, I mean, you said that Woodford Reserve was kind of one of the first bourbons you fell in love with. Well, in 2019, I was working at Webster's Bar, and I was actually taken on the 1870 incentive trip with Brown Forman. And the first distillery that I went to check out was Old Forester, and it was one of those things that after 14 years in the hospitality industry, it blew my mind. What could take place at one of these home places, and sitting down and doing the tasting was one of the things that led me to apply for a job with Brown Forman. So it's got a very special place in my heart. And yeah, starting with the 86 proof is pretty appropriate. It's what we would call across Old Forester as our house style of whiskey. So every distillery, whether it's Jack Daniel's with Black Label, Old Number 7, Woodford Reserve with Distillers Select, we've all got a house style of whiskey. And that is really anyone that is coming across the brand for the first time will be able to try this beautiful bourbon and have a sense of what the distillery is all about. So the 86 proof, this bottle here that I'm holding is the 80 proof, which we get in Australia, but we all know the Americans like to, tack on a few more percentage points. They also don't have the same tariffs, hot topic, to deal with as us. So we're getting to try Old Forester 86 as the Americans and the distilling team really brought, well, the original that was brought to life at the distillery. So anytime people talk about adding water to their whiskey or adding ice to their whiskey, I think it's really important to note that the first sip should always be neat, just because the distilling team have put it together at that proof for a very special reason. After that, adding a couple of drops of water, highly encouraged, especially when we get up to the Seelbacks and even, Brocks and Whiskey Hunt's beautiful barrel pick. Some of these are going to be pretty hot. So grab a glass of water, have it nearby, add a couple of drops after you've tried it neat. If you like to put in ice, it's your mouth, it's not anyone else's, so you're the one to decide how to drink it and enjoy it. But yeah, this is the classic Old Forester. So if you got that glass in your hand already, some of you have probably already finished it while I tell my life story. But this is really where it all begins with Old Forester. Exactly the same grain and mash bill as Woodford Reserve. So 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley. There's a reason that Chris Morris kind of rolled that mash bill across both distilleries, because it's just a banger, and he found that perfect balance between that light, very high corn content, but also dialing in a bit of that rye spice, because it really brings in that backbone and just spices up those beautiful, rich vanilla, sweet corn and caramel notes. So without further ado, that's a lot of talking and not enough whiskey drinking. So cheers, and let's try the 86 proof.
Ollie's obviously put it in the chat as well that Brock from Whiskey Hunt Australia says hello. He's also under the weather today. I feel like I was lucky to catch it last week. I feel like everyone's getting sick at the moment. So
it's going around.
It is going around, yeah. And whiskey and antibiotics do not mix. Definitely not a good idea, but should have just had whiskey straight up as medication.
Exactly. You know what? And that's a perfect segue, Emma, into the origin story of Old Forester as well. So a lot of you have probably heard this story before. For those of you that haven't, this is Brown Forman's founding brand. So in 1870, over 150 years ago, George Garvin Brown was our founder, and he was actually a pharmacist. He didn't start off as a distiller. He actually came to whiskey as a bit of a side gig, while he was a pharmacist and obviously prescribing bourbon across the different ages that we saw in the whiskey world, including Prohibition, right? So George Garvin Brown saw a lot of inconsistencies in the world of bourbon, specifically speaking to the way that whiskey was transported from the distillery to the outlets that it was sold in, whether that was, a tavern, a pub, wherever, including, a pharmacy where the bourbon would actually be sold, over the counter. There was a lot of inconsistency on the way from the distillery to the outlet, including the driver of the truck or the horse-drawn cart at different times in history. It would be filled to 100%, and that barrel, by the time you got to the pharmacy, it would be down to about 70%, very curiously, right? So the driver was probably having a couple of drams on the way, selling off, in bootleg amounts to his friends, and on the way to the pharmacy. And by the time it got there, the product had sunk down to about 70%. And this is obviously just to kind of give you an idea of what was happening in the deep south of America. But what they were doing was they were actually filling it up with water, spitting, chewing tobacco to give it a little bit more spice, putting bits of wood to kind of bring it back once they had raised that level to something similar to the original product. Now, the problem with that was any pharmacist that is prescribing bourbon for a headache or a cold, very appropriate at the moment to prescribing bourbon for a cold. But the problem with that was every single bourbon that they were getting from these pharmacies or these outlets was a slightly different product due to the fact that there was no sealed bottle. And when George Garvin Brown came along, the first thing that he went to do was really to drive consistency. And to do that, he was the first person to put a seal on the top of the bottle. And that was really a significant change in the course of American whiskey, because before then, someone would go in complaining of a headache, and then 2 weeks later, they would be prescribed more bourbon during Prohibition, and they would come back and they couldn't see out of their left eye because of the terrible, the terrible differences between each outlet and the inconsistencies between the bourbon they were receiving. So George Garvin Brown is really a historical figure, and we're very thankful because he was the first to seal the bottle, and that mark of quality really, speaks volumes. So we get to enjoy a sealed bottle thanks to George Garvin Brown. And from then on, Brown Forman went to acquire Jack Daniels, Woodford Reserve, and all the rest of our beautiful brands. But it's kind of cool to tell a bit of an origin story of where it all started. So what did everyone think of the 86 proof? Did we enjoy? Bit of sweet corn,
I mean,
rye.
I loved it. I got a lot of like cola nut as well. Patrick got like vanilla infused pipe tobacco on the nose.
Oh, that's lovely.
Great call. Yeah, Ben's getting marzipan for days. Adam's getting banana lollies and leather. I agree with Ollie, that extra proof, because it's what, 3%? So it's bottled at 40% typically for the Australian market.
Exactly.
Excise. Mail, call your local rep, yell at them about excise.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the rep's fault. It's not the rep's fault.
No, you're a local representative, like government representative. You.
That's true. Sorry, I thought you were talking about sales reps, and they're innocent.
I'm copping the blame for this. No, call your government people. But yeah, so it is wild how it makes such a difference. It just really amplifies that rich tobacco spiciness. But super good. Patrick's also getting grandma's sweet corn bread on the palate, warm from the oven with a Kentucky hug.
Kentucky hug.
Yeah. A banana, peanut caramel, lots of spice on the front, leather, dry, short to medium finish. Yeah. It's one of those finishes where it's like it's dry enough that I want to go back for another sip, which is one of my favorite ways you can finish a whiskey. It's nice to have like a really long finish on a whiskey, but sometimes you want it to be short enough that it leaves you wanting more. Yeah, it's super good. Yeah, Tom, very nice. Yes, agree with
keep the tasting notes coming through, guys. They are awesome, and it's great to hear as well the diversity of different tasting notes and those aromas that come through, because everyone's got a different palate. So I'll always try to open that conversation as much as possible, because after all, I'll go into a training session and I'll think, oh, remember that time when Ollie said rye bread, or, grandma's sweet corn cake. All of these things, whether you've tried them or not, are going to bring a different context to what you smell and taste. So keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone's like tried different things in their life. Like I know what like sweet cornbread tastes like, but it's something hard to find here in Australia, sadly. But yeah, super, super cool. Well, we might move on to whiskey number 2, the Statesman. So I have to tell this little story. A couple of years ago, I was having a chat with Linus, who's the kind of the national BA for Brown Forman and stuff like that, and we were having a talk about the fact that Brown Forman was going to be acquiring Glendronach. And I went to see the Kingsman movie, I think, in cinemas not long after. And in the Kingsman movie at the end, they're like, oh, we love you guys over in the UK so much. We bought one of your distilleries. And it's like, it's a bottle of Glendronach. It doesn't say Glendronach, but like, and cut to me being the only person in the cinema laughing my ass off out loud because I knew about the contract deal before like the movie was out for
Right.
distribution. And my husband like looked at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's like, what are you doing? I'm like, but I'll explain later.
It's so interesting you bring that up because that relationship started with Matthew Vaughn, the director, long before the first, a Kingsman movie came out. And Glendronach was heavily hailed as a whiskey that they wanted to feature, but they didn't want to have to go through the whole, what are we paying to feature at different times in the film? So it was a Glendronach, that beautiful kind of neat whiskey they were enjoying together. But Matthew Vaughn has a really good relationship with Brown Forman. He loves our products. And when it came time for the Golden Circle, which kind of brings us into the Statesman, he really wanted to feature an American whiskey. There's this amazing scene where Channing Tatum, who is, one of the agents based in Kentucky, he comes out with a shotgun over his shoulder. There's a giant barrel behind him that says Statesman. And it was kind of at that moment, a lot of people are putting two and two together, even though it doesn't say Old Forester. This is a massive reference to our distillery. And Matthew, as he was directing the film, was actually really good friends with Jackie Zykan, who at the time was kind of one of our master blenders. And she and him actually took a walk through the distillery together at Old Forester to select a couple of different barrels that would go in to make the Statesman mix. And it ties so perfectly into that film as well, because Matthew was talking about the fact that true character, right? This is the statement that he made. True character is revealed after the addition of a little heat. And he was talking about the fact that these guys, these heroes are beautiful. Thank you. That's incredible. That's exactly the picture I was conjuring in my mind. So your true character is revealed through a little heat, right? So you can't be a hero unless you have gone through, something really difficult, something that has forced you to go above and beyond. And Channing Tatum was a classic example of that. He was kind of relatively untried and untested until he had to go through this series of trials. And for that reason, Jackie Zykan picked 3 barrels in differing areas of the rick house, but more importantly, speaking to the top areas of the rick house where you've got a lot more of that barrel movement due to the high heat, right? And that high heat, the same as Matthew Vaughn would talk about in the movies, creates that true character, whether that character is, the barrel spice or, the wood sugars or that extra little bit of char that comes through in that profile. Jackie and Matthew were kind of like cheersing an Old Forester going, hey, this is actually really indicative of the film. So that's what it was all about. And Statesman was released for the Golden Circle. And it's the only time I've ever seen Brown Forman brands, I guess, heavily linked with the launch of a film. So a really cool partnership between, Jackie, Chris Morris, and of course, Matthew Vaughn, the director. So that's the story. I'm not sure if you needed that much detail, but it's a really cool one for me because Statesman is kind of like a bigger, beefier version of Old Forester 86 proof. It just has that little bit of extra. You guys were talking about leather and tobacco. This one brings it even more, to the forefront of your palate. So let's have a dram, right? It's 95 proof and 47.5% ABV. A sweet spot for anyone that likes, that 50% area like me. 50 to 60 is like the sweet spot. So yeah, let's have a try. Cheers.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like my instant first nose was like this big bold lemongrass character. It's got this like really cool like Thai lemongrass vibrancy to it. And I mean, look, I'm not a smoker. I'm not a tobacco or cigar person at all, but I do feel like some of the cigars I've seen out there, it has that tannic tobacco quality to it for sure on the palate. Ashley's a giant film nerd, so living for the information. Yeah, it was so cool.
Oh
And I think
yeah.
it was
Your cats. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm just going to cut you off for 2 seconds because a cat comment came up. I saw it. Then the cat was behind you. And the last thing, and I promise you, this is really interesting for the film buffs as well. The last thing I have to talk about with Statesman before it leaves my mind is that Matthew Vaughn heavily features a cat throughout the Golden Circle film. The cat's called Alfie. And they actually came up with an Old Forester Statesman cocktail called the Whisker Sour. So they called it, yeah, right. They called it a whisker sour. So it was Old Forester Statesman Contro squash, or like a, lemonade squash, and 2 dashes of aromatic bitters. And I had to bring it up because the cat came up, the cat comment was there, and I'm like, Alfie, right? So Matthew Vaughn loves cats, and he featured the cat during the film and made a cocktail for it, for anyone that didn't know that.
Amazing. Well,
Sorry to cut you off. I just have
no,
to say
no,
it.
I love it. Honestly, so one of the foster kittens is named Alfred. That is not Alfred. Alfred is, I don't know what he's doing down there, but I've got two in my arms over here, and yeah, I do name them after like cartoon characters or comic book characters and stuff like that. So maybe I should do film characters for the next Fosters.
I think you should.
But yeah, no, super cool. But yeah, and I think Scott was saying, best film and booze collaboration. I definitely feel like
Right.
Statesman was a really kind of not subtle, but like a really kind of well crafted. This is a great bourbon, this is like a fun movie. I love the movies, and it being a part of kind of going into the core range long term. I think it was really smart to be like, yeah, no, this isn't just like a shtick. And this is a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
whiskey that we've curated and selected. I think you guys did a great, well, the team at Old Forester did a great job with it. But oh, Ben's getting a little licorice on the back. That is definitely, it's that kind of, yeah, Dutch black licorice
Oh,
vibe as well.
wow. Your
Um,
lemongrass tasting note actually blew my mind, because there's this idea in my mind that a lot of Old Foresters have that little bit of orange zest, not unfamiliar with Chris Morris's kind of distilling technique. But you're right, this is not orange. It's actually more in the lemongrass front. And I would not have picked that had you not have said that. So you're right, it's got that kind of fusion lemongrass
yeah,
kind of flavor.
it's
Really
it's
cool.
that
Really
like,
cool.
yeah, it's grassy but citrus at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, super, super cool. Adam's getting green apple skins. Yeah,
Love
definitely a
that.
skin. Nutmeg, baking spice on the palate, little vanilla, but the rice spice overwhelms it. Um, yeah, super good. Um, Patrick says it's a bit thin on the mouthfeel. Yeah, I mean, look, I think everyone in this room could probably quaff this at 52%. And I think that would be like a great ABV for the like just to really punch up that viscosity, that grassiness, that citrus and whatnot.
Mm.
But yeah, this is definitely sessionable, like you said. Nice intro. I think it'd make a great kind of Manhattan type thing as well, because it's like that not rye
Mm.
style, but it's got a lot of the similar tones.
It's
So
definitely got
yeah.
the grassiness of rye, but I know what you mean with the slightly thinner style. So after you've had the 86 to go on to, the Statesman, you're expecting a bit, I guess a bit more like of a velvety, rich kind of texture to it, and it is a little bit on the thinner side. But I think that also allows that rye and that kind of spice to come through a lot more. So kind of sacrificing one for another, I suppose. But it's a pretty cool segue actually going from the Statesman onto the 1872, because they're going to have some similarities, but I think everyone is going to find, at 90 proof, obviously the 1870 has a little bit more body to it as well, a little bit more intensity. So that'll be a cool one to move on to.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. I've misspelled whiskey. Oh, and I've got kittens fighting on my lap, so I missed an E. Sorry.
And it's funny that you say, the spell, you're just queuing me up here unintentionally, but
Look, Patrick reckons I'm the queen of segues, and
but
this
this
is
is
truly
great.
the chance to prove it.
Old Forester spells whiskey, even though they're an American, they're a Kentucky bourbon. They spell whiskey without an E, and it's one of the only times in the industry that I've ever seen that, which is super interesting. But I like it. I like Ray and I, back when we worked in Webster's Bar, would argue all the time about which we preferred, and I've always preferred the Y. I don't know why, but I don't know why, but Old Forester always resonated because they just decided to go with the Y. 1870, I guess we can kind of take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about the history. George Garvin Brown, I kind of touched on the fact that he was a pharmacist, that he wanted to bring consistency. The first bottled bourbon started there. But in 1870, when he first set up the distillery, he didn't have a distillery. When he first set up the operation, he was drawing his whiskey from 3 different distilleries at the time that were open. So you had Atherton, Mattingly, and Melwood. And there were three different distilleries that all had a completely different style, as you can imagine. It's sort of like the equivalent of a blended scotch, taking from three different distilleries that you'll have different percentages to build a profile. So when, Chris Morris kind of came across, started setting up the flavor profiles for our Old Forester Whiskey Rose series, which we're now delving into. These are rare, by the way, for anyone that hasn't tried them before. They're pretty hard to get your hands on. George Garvin Brown ended up purchasing Mattingly, one of the distilleries, and that's where he ended up starting the operation of Old Forester and starting to distill for the first time a product that would become known as Old Forester from one distillery. But before that, it was drawn from three. So to emulate that, the team, including Jackie, including Chris Morris, went to three very specific different areas of the rick house, pretty similar to the way that that Jackie selected barrels to become part of the Statesman program. But this time, each of the barrels were selected to, I guess, give a callback and make a connection to each of those three distilleries that George Garvin Brown was visiting and purchasing from in 1870. So I think it was in 1901, George Garvin Brown bought Mattingly, and that would end up becoming the Old Forester distillery on Whiskey Row, which is pretty amazing. So this one here, it's a little bit beefier, 90 proof. So that's what, 45% ABV. Let's have a taste of it. I've got to have it in my hand while I'm talking. This one for me is where you start to get cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, a little bit more of those kind of nutty spices coming through. And even on the nose, it's just like a toasted nuts, really delicious. And a little bit again of those baking spices. Jim Murray, in his Whiskey Bible 2021, he gave this a review by saying simply gorgeous bourbon and gave it a 94 out of 100, which is a pretty awesome review. Anyway, cheers. 1870.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as soon as you said clove, like it struck out to me like a sore thumb. I've been making this mulled apple juice. It's like a German mulled apple juice. I throw a bit of allspice berries in there as well. That pimento berry makes like such a difference, and I can kind of pick that up in here as well. Yeah, it's like it reminds me a lot of the mulled apple juice. This like German drink, which has been seeing me through these cold nights.
Someone just put up in the chat cardamom and apple too, which kind of ties into what you said. Great tasting notes.
100%. Yeah, cardamom and apple pie on the nose. Patrick, the 1870 throws orange blossom and honeysuckle. Honeysuckle's another great call. That like a fresh honeysuckle. They used to have them at the elementary school I went to, and I would pick them and eat the honeysuckle sugar.
Wow.
But yeah, Adam's getting cherry cough syrup. Yeah, I can get that. That like
cherry cough syrup.
Yeah, there's a Greek cherry syrup called Vicinada, and that kind of reminds me of that like real tart, sour cherry, but sugary as well. Brioche and cardamom. Nick's would have given it 115 out of 100. Yep.
Very generous. We'll take it.
Yep. Yeah, so more spice coming through on the palate. Classic baking spice. Frizz used to make mulled cider at the bar a few years ago. Yeah, I love mulled cider, but the amount of apple juice we go through, we cannot make it alcohol. We would never be able to leave our house. We may or may not have gone through about 6 liters in the last few days. So,
oh wow,
it's so good. I'll have to make it for maybe I'll make it for an event coming up or something. But yeah, super good. Yeah, close studded oranges, Patrick, another really great call. Yeah, it's super cool.
I think
feel like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, do you feel like Old Forester has like outside of that orangey tone, which is kind of I find it more with the Woodford Reserve products. Do you find that Old Forester has its own kind of core flavor profile that's distinct and jumps out?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. With Woodford Reserve and Old Forester, the links that I get are more on the sort of spice and the slightly nutty front. Whereas I feel that with Old Forester, I've always, even though we haven't really encountered it yet in our tasting notes, is I've always gotten more fudge out of Old Forester And in Woodford Reserve, I always get more of the darker side of caramel and even dark chocolate, like almost like that kind of slightly tannic chocolate that I get with Woodford. Old Forester for me is a little bit more fudgy. But outside of that, I think the rye side, and this is perfectly brought to life by the cardamom and the apple and the spice comments, the type of rye that you get through with Old Forester is a lot more pronounced than I get with Woodford. And that really depends on the style, right? Like Chris started Woodford rye as a low rye style that was pre-prohibition. So he liked a style of rye that was on the gentle side, and that was how Woodford rye kind of ended up becoming quite unique because of that. And it was 53% rye. It's only just a rye, and I think the way that he plays with rye between Old Forester and Woodford Reserve, and same with Elizabeth McCall, is keeping that rye in check. But I feel with Old Forester, you get a slightly more rye bread and cardamom spice style than you would with Woodford, which is more dark chocolate and orange, in my view. Took about 10 minutes to explain something that I could have said in probably 5 words, but hey, that's bourbon, right?
I mean, we wouldn't have jobs if we
That's
couldn't
right.
make
That's right. Andy, you've
a
got an
tasting
hour.
note
We
into
expect you
an
to fill
hour-long
it.
elegy. No, I love
Yeah,
it.
1870. So it's such a beautiful bourbon. It's great. We're skipping the 1896, but worth giving it a call out. The 1896 was the bottled in bond release as part of Whiskey Row, and then we're going Old Fine, which I'm sure there are so many people on this virtual that are obsessed with the 1910, just as I am. It's like one of the crazy, smooth, delicious, fudgy, chewy bourbons that I've ever had. But we're also skipping the 1920, which is worth calling out too. So that one there is very much a higher proof in 1920, and that gives a bit of a call out to the style of bourbon that we were making during Prohibition. So when George Garvin Brown, pre-Prohibition, was obviously making bourbon, selling bourbon, and prescribing as a pharmacist. During Prohibition, he was one of 6 people in the United States to apply and receive a license to prescribe bourbon as a medicine. So it's because of his entrepreneurial mindset and creative nature that we were able to navigate Old Forester as a distillery before Prohibition, during Prohibition. And then, of course, after Volstead came in 1933, he would continue with his distilling team, putting out products as bourbon, and the need for the pharmacy prescriptions was no longer necessary. So it makes us the only distillery in the world that have distilled before, during, and after Prohibition. And it's cool. I'm just going to put my Brown Forman cap on for 2 seconds. It really talks about the way that Brown Forman approached brand building. It's that creative approach. It's that long-lasting effect and navigating the dark, unpredictable waters that our liquor industry is, right? So it's all due to George Garvin. Like the reason that we have this product still is because he was very creative and able to get one of 6 licenses to continue. So on to 1910. Shall we go straight on?
Yeah, I was thinking, when we were mentioning it before, it's yeah, and kind of talking again about the only 6 licenses. It's so interesting as well to see the people who were getting the licenses. I did a bit of a deep dive on Prohibition and Shenley Industries, which was kind of making a little bit of whiskey, but they were they were properly a pharmaceutical company. And so it's interesting to see how so many of those pharmaceutical companies, which now practically run the US, were really oh, you know what, let's jump on this, and how many continued afterwards, because Shenley created blends well into the 60s and 70s, so after Prohibition. But yeah, it's super cool to kind of see that that a brand like Old Forester was we were about whiskey to start with. We
Totally.
we did some fancy talking with the government during Prohibition to
Yeah.
keep going, and we're still about whiskey on the other side. So yeah, super cool.
Exactly. And it's that entrepreneurial approach too, isn't it? It's sort of like I've got this incredible product. We're going to have to button down the hatches. Jack Daniels, across the other side of the US, Lem Motlow had just inherited the distillery after Uncle Jack passed away, and he became a mule trader to get Jack Daniels through that period where they could no longer, distill and sell whiskey. So there was a lot of, distilleries across the United States that had to pivot, right? Pivot, that classic COVID word. We're all on a Zoom, so it's appropriate that we use the word pivot, right? But that pivot really allows a distillery to either fail or succeed, and it was because of George that we're still here. It's pretty amazing. Old Fine Whiskey. Okay, so look, you're not allowed to have favorite children. But the 1910 for me is just one of the most beautifully crafted products. And for anyone that knows me and has had a conversation about Old Forester with me, I love this story because it talks about an accident really that turned into an innovation. We wouldn't like to call it an accident, right? Because anything where an innovation, comes out, you focus on the fact that it's innovative and not the fact that it was an accident. But in 1910, and this is, kind of through the story, like Old Forester moving through the ages, we're drinking through whiskey. We're drinking through history. There you go. I've already had a couple of whiskeys and we're apparently drinking through whiskey. But it was in October the 22nd, 1910, there was a fire in the bottling line at Old Forester. And the problem with that was they obviously could not get their fully distilled, completely matured product sitting in this giant tank, right? And when you've got an 100 proof liquor and fire is tearing its way through the distillery, there's only really one way that can end. So the distilling team had to think on their toes, and they drew all of that, 100 proof, beautifully finished, crafted, aged bourbon out of the vat to protect it from the fire and moved it into barrels that were virgin American oak, but they'd already been toasted and charred. Now, of course, the entire distillery team are thinking this is the biggest waste of bourbon that we're ever going to have, but it's either this or it catches a light and we can never use it anyway. The entire distillery would never financially have recovered from that amount of loss, right? So they had to think really quick. So they put completely finished bourbon into virgin American oak barrels that had been toasted and charred. And by accident, when they were booting those barrels out of the distillery to protect them, they had discovered double-barreled bourbon, right? Or barrel-finished bourbon as a mistake. And trying that whiskey a year later when they were kind of drawing the samples out of the barrel, rather than thinking, oh, this has been damaged by the fire, it's been put into a second barrel, it's going to be over-oaked, they discovered that it actually had this beautiful, deep maple syrup, fudge, really like sticky, toffee kind of flavor profile to it. And it was because of that accident or innovation that we were able to start something called barrel finishing, or, even you would call it a double oaked in the Woodford Reserve world. And, moving on to that, Chris Morris and, of course, Elizabeth McCall started Woodford Reserve double oaked as a bit of a throwback to what happened in 1910 on October 22nd. It was an accidental innovation that we found out that aging in a virgin American oak barrel after a completely perfect, 4 to 5 year aged bourbon, it wouldn't ruin, but it would actually enhance that sweet flavor profile. So that's where we're at with the 1910 Old Fine Whiskey. Those barrels were kept to the side, and we know that the Brown family kept a lot of these barrels and secretly were giving it off to their friends as a way of saying, hey, thank you, try this amazing whiskey. They still hadn't figured out the perfect way to market it yet, right? But through the ages, it ended up becoming one of the most popular releases that they had, and it was really only shared with family and friends, which, all of us are family and friends, right, guys? So let's try some Old Fine Whiskey. This one here, 93 proof, 46% ABV, double barreled. So it's aged for 45 years in heavily toasted, lightly charred American oak barrels. And then it's placed into a secondary barrel that's been toasted for 40 minutes and charred for 20 seconds. So you've got that real kind of like deep wood sugar that comes through and creates more of that fudgy maple syrupy profile. Enough talk, let's drink. Cheers.
Yeah, the notes that I was reading and whatnot helped me really narrow in on what it was I was tasting. There is this beer from, I think it's made in California, from a brand called Belching Beaver, and they make a peanut butter milk stout.
I know the
And
one.
yes. My favorite part when I worked at Whiskey and Ailment, we would get it in every winter, but we'd only be able to get 1 or 2 cases because it was really expensive. And I can guarantee you, not a single one sold to a customer. We all got them as our like drink at the end of the night knockoffs. We're all like,
Staffy.
well, I'll have a stout, I'll have a stout. And it kind of became like the first day they were in the fridge, it became, ritualistic to be like, oh, everyone's getting a Belching Beaver for a kind of knockoff. We'll just all sit, chug back this super smashable stout. But yeah,
I was
it
so
has all
addicted to
those
that.
same, it's so good. And I can't drink beer anymore. It makes me so sad. But this is like if that beer was in whiskey form, it's that peanut butter,
Mm.
that chocolate, that stout bitterness, that like, you know, Lawrence is saying dark toffee and dark cocoa, slightly
Oh
herbaceous,
yeah.
100%.
Mm.
Uh, Patrick's getting Danish butter cookies, drizzled toffee. Adam's getting overripe apple, coffee
Oh,
apple,
toffee apple.
coffee
Love
apple,
that.
yeah.
It's amazing because we've been talking about, green apple skins. We've been talking about cardamom and that kind of like higher, more rye heavy content. Now we're moving that same green apple, but we're moving that through a toffee. And that's exactly what Old Time whiskey is. We're keeping a little bit of that like slightly grassy rye content, but we're really coating that in a sticky toffee. That's a beautiful way of describing this whiskey. I love it.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh,
Like,
and for anyone that has chocolate, I don't know if you guys are like mad chocolate fiends like I am, but if you have I've got a Tim Tam right here. If you've got another chocolate, anything fudge like, anything honey like, even maple syrup, just putting a little bit on your finger, try the 1910 and then bite into a bit of chocolate, honey, maple syrup, whatever you have. It really enhances that deep toasted sweetness that you get from all the wood sugars. And it's just an excuse to have a Tim Tam, whatever you guys.
yeah, I see Lawrence has got a pack of Tim Tams there. Yep.
Yes, do it.
The
Yes.
Yeah, a few people. Andrew Christie's prepared. I love it. I think I ate all of the chocolate in my house while I was sick, which is in hindsight. Scott's got a bit of old gold. You know, I recently
Sorry,
moved to
Michael, that you've run out of chocolate. I'm sorry.
yeah.
If you got any biscuits, any biscuits, any almonds like toasted nuts will go really well as well. But just spoil your palate with a bit of chocolate if you have some.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, I loved your comment as well. Peanut brownie in whiskey form. Patrick, caramel popcorn is a thing, but like kettle cooked caramel corn, nothing quite so fancy as that exists here, I think. But yeah, super good. Haven't had dinner yet, way too early for chocolate. False. You're an adult who
I
pays
strongly
taxes.
disagree. Strongly disagree.
Any time is chocolate time. At least I hope you're an adult who pays taxes. This is an 18 and over tasting. Andrew's eaten the last of his Woodford bourbon balls, chocolate balls for this one.
Oh, flex. Oh,
Oh,
delicious.
I
So
know,
good.
very
All right.
jealous.
I need to get changed now.
Yes,
I need
we need you to get a little bit saucy.
Has anyone got
Yeah,
Joe Cocker's "You Can Leave Your Hat On"?
yeah,
Dun, dun,
yeah.
dun, dun, dun. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I like the under the bar transition. That's is very smooth. For modesty, obviously. Um, Michael didn't realize he's signing up for this kind of show. The best part is you're far enough away that we can't even read that it says Whiskey Hunt Australia. So
Whiskey Hunt Australia had to be
yeah.
done.
Amazing.
I hope
Um,
Brock's enjoying that one.
yeah. Wait, fire emojis.
Oh, we'll
Yeah.
take them.
So we've got this message to play for you. Hopefully Ollie can make it work.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
All
I can
right.
hear you.
Hopefully this works. This is Melissa Riff, the master taster from Old Forester. Obviously, with the time zone difference, Mel couldn't join us, so she's recorded us a little special intro video for this next whiskey.
Hey everybody, Melissa Rift here with Old Forester, calling in from the road to share some exciting news with my folks down under. This is our third and final barrel pick for Whiskey Hunt Australia, and it is a beauty. Just 204 bottles came from this hand-selected barrel, chosen in Kentucky by Brock and the WHA team. Now, this one is rare. It is the only Old Forester single barrel officially bottled outside the US since 2001, so we're really excited to share it with y'all in Australia. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to get in the glass. we are sticking with our classic 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley, traditional Old Forester mash bill. And you guys, on the nose of this classic Old Forester sweet banana, it just hits you right in the face. The palate follows with rich peanut brittle, caramel, and a gentle wave of mid-level sweetness, not overly heavy vanilla. Instead, you're going to notice a subtle toasted oak character, and the finish is beautiful. Oak-driven with a satisfying lift of spice. It's bold, but super easy to drink. Bottled at 100 proof from our warehouse L, floor 2. Australia, we really hope you enjoy this incredible barrel pick from Old Forester. We're so excited to share it with you. Cheers.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Ollie.
Yeah, super, super cool. I think, Andy, do you want to kind of chat? This is one of the only and the lowest that you're just enjoying it too much.
It's so good.
So am I correct in thinking this is probably going to be one of the last Old Forester barrel picks for outside of the US?
I think there's a couple of challenges, and this would be more kind of Linus's wheelhouse to speak about, I guess, the future of barrel picks. So I won't kind of, I say too much, especially not knowing exactly what the future is going to look like for barrel picks. But certainly there are a few changes happening across the distilleries on what will and what will not be able to be, which barrel picks will be available and not. So I know that there's been a bit of a changeover at Woodford. I presume that Old Forester is probably going to be in a similar boat, but that's not a forever thing. I think it's just a temporary thing for the minute. But again, I'll leave that to Linus to reveal to our community when he has a little bit more information. He asked me the same question about Jack Daniels. I'll bang on all night, but I think it's awesome that Brock was able to do this trilogy because when it all started, I think Brock had seen all these amazing barrel picks kind of happening throughout the US, and correct me if I'm wrong if he's there and he can just kind of take himself off mute and go, "Shut up, Andy." But I think the whole idea from the beginning was making those beautiful hand-selected barrel picks more of a talked about and celebrated and enjoyed thing in Australia. Because really, when you go to that length to be able to try all these different samples, pick one that speaks to you, bring it back to your own country, and share it with your following, it's a beautiful thing, right? And I think when you come back and you see your name on a label, it really kind of sets that aside because there's a journey behind it. It's not just picking something that tastes good. It's about the journey, and it's about discovering with that small group of people that's made it over to the United States and are rolling through different rick houses and trying different things. What do we all connect on? Like, what profiles do we all agree that we're looking for? And sometimes you get that surprise barrel that will have a profile that no one had really talked about, but when you sit down and you sip it like I just did, you go silent and you just kind of look down and you think, man, that's a next level bourbon. I intentionally didn't try any of these samples before we kicked into the virtual, and just trying that for the first time, it's an outstanding bourbon. But it's, I guess, an awesome time to thank Brock for that mission of taking a group over, being the most incredible host, putting on those beautiful Whiskey Hunt Australia tours that bring these really rare products, and make them accessible in our community, because really, we know everyone on this chat is a nerd in one way or another. We all love bourbon to bits. We love the stories. We love that idea that we're all sitting around a virtual campfire sharing stories and drams. But what Brock's doing is he's really kind of bringing across barrels and sharing that story. So, wow, this is crazy. I got a little bit of a stat and detail that I'm sure Brock would love me to share, but 100 proof is a really satisfying number. 50% ABV. It's just like cut, straight in the middle. It's from Warehouse L. It's from Floor 2. And you heard, the detail just now. There are only 204 bottles as a yield. So there's a fair bit of loss to evaporation there. But what is left is this peanut, brittle, caramel, oak spice, that little bit of banana in there as well. It's just delightful, right? It's almost like a banoffee toffee peanut brittle dessert. It's lovely. And thank you, Brock and Team Whiskey List, because stuff like this really changes our industry. And And we're able to spoil ourselves with something that has been hand selected by someone in the industry in the know, with a passion for bourbon. So there we go. I'm done with my rant, Emma. Thank you.
No, I know Brock said he should have kept 3 cases back, but and I'm certain that a whole trip of traveling around and tasting American whiskey was so hard. I'm certain
Really
that
tough.
such a struggle. I did get my American passport ready just in case I got asked to go, but then the election happened. I was like, never mind, I'm good.
I take it back.
Yeah, pretty much. I was just like, that's $200 I could have saved on a passport renewal. But yeah, 100% that toffee banana.
Mm.
I'm like on the first thing on the nose, I distinctly got there was this is like going back and probably only people in Melbourne might know, but there used to be Jackie Chan restaurants here in Melbourne, like owned by the actor Jackie
His
Chan.
parents live in Melbourne, right?
I have no
They
idea.
do, yeah. Jackie Chan's parents live in Melbourne. Little
Well,
known
that would
fact. So he travels down every now and again, and that probably would have been the base of his operations for that reason.
Well, yeah, he had these great restaurants, and they had, still to this day, it is my kind of baseline flavor profile for banana fritters in golden syrup,
Wow.
with ice cream. Like, it was so good. The restaurants are shut down now, but like that is the quintessential flavor profile of what a banana fritter should taste like, and that's the flavor profile I get in whiskeys like this. It is, yeah, so incredible, so chewy.
It
You get like that
is.
little
Yeah.
bit of rye kind of tickling the back there, but yeah, it's so good, and everyone's like clearly loving it in the chat.
My
Mark
question is,
says,
Emma, where is our belching beaver peanut brittle milk
right,
stout to go with this as a Boilermaker pairing?
right. Well, I think I know a bottle shop that may or may not stock it, so I might have a can ready for you if you're coming down to Melbourne for the show.
We've got a
Uh,
couple of bottle shops here. Look, we're not endorsing beer products on this stream, of course, but
yeah,
I
it's
know
just
the
wasted whiskey.
Union and the Townie in like my local area, Newtown, Camperdown kind of area. They've still got Belching Beaver, which is pretty cool. I kind of gone off a lot of craft beers. I think I went too deep into the rabbit hole, and I was having like triple fruited, Goza sours, and then I was having, the peanut butter and peanut brittle imperial stouts. And I think I went too far once I hit one drop, and I started getting into all those crazy dessert beers. And I think I went so far that now I just go for a pilsner or a lager. But I think this calls for a beautiful stout as a pairing for sure. A porter, peanut butter if you can find it. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
I
delicious.
feel like I feel like with craft beer, it does eventually kind of come full circle round. I was never like a massive beer geek, but now that I can't drink beer anymore because I can't have carbonated things, it's
Ah,
the Belching Beaver I miss, Roddenback, just a cheeky
oh,
Roddenback
mm.
classic. And I think they put a rice lager in at Whiskey and Element recently. I was like, oh, there's nothing I would mess up more than a rice lager, just that clean, light.
Chris, yeah.
Yeah, I would like it would be Boilermakers all day, but hopefully one day I can have carbonated things again. But yeah, super good. Ashley's getting banana bread caramelized demerara sugar is a great call.
Nice. Yeah, a
And
slightly
then
darker, richer sugar.
yeah, a hint of toasted peanuts. OMG, says Glenn. This is unreal.
Glenn, perfect,
Amazing,
perfect.
amazing pick. And yeah, Brock saying thank you guys at Brown Forman for making it all possible. Yeah, so good. Andrew Christie's wondering approximately how old this one is.
A very good
Um,
question.
yes.
I mean, it's not going to be on the bottle, that's for sure. I mean,
That might be
generally speaking, we don't release any bourbons that have aged under 4 years, but we can't really reveal, and that's not due to a lack of transparency, but generally speaking, with releases, specifically this one here, I don't know if we've got a date distilled.
There's no date.
No, unfortunately, Andrew, I cannot help you. Good guy, Andrew. If you're there, hello, Mr. Christie.
yeah.
Just to jump in, so just so people realize where Brock's concept of barrel picks has come from. So in the States, they have incredibly difficult, I guess, regional-based liquor laws. So there's no online shipping like we have in Australia. You can't just buy something. You live in Perth, you can order it from a bottle shop in Sydney. They won't ship it across the country. So each bottle shop will basically, this concept of barrel picks, they get their own localized version of it. And that's usually just one full barrel of a bourbon or a rye or something like that. So Brock's brought that concept to Australia. And each year or every second year, he takes a group of whiskey fanatics. Hands up if there's two in the room here that I can see. Andrew and Scott, who was on the last one earlier this year.
I'm still waiting for my invite, by the way. No big deal.
Then 2026. But yeah, basically they spend the time, they jump in a car and a bus, they go to Kentucky, Tennessee, wherever whiskey's made in the States, a few other places, and they just visit distilleries and they run through the rick houses and they try the whiskey. But I might hand it over to Scott quickly to tell us what's your favorite thing about these bourbon tours that Brock puts on.
Ollie, it's a bit of a marathon. You do a few different distilleries every day. It's tough. I wouldn't recommend it for the faint-hearted. The best part about it is meeting kind of the guys who are doing it, and the personalities who are really passionate about whiskey. They've been doing it sometimes in their family for generations. But just getting to really experience these kind of things that no one else does. Nobody else does maturation the way the Americans do it. Nobody else does 7 or 8 floor rick houses that they get rickety in the wind, and the kind of you're creaking around when you're walking in this massive rick house, and you're smelling all the whiskey coming in, and you kind of go, I'm a little bit scared it's going to fall down all around me, because it just doesn't look like it's it's that strong. But just being in and amongst it. The tours are really awesome. We're going to do a few more of them. So no question, if you want to jump on board, come along.
And Andrew, I don't know if you
pick some casks. No question, we'll be knocking on.
Sorry,
I was going to say we'll be knocking on Brown Forman's door, and we'll be chasing down more casks in the future. Don't worry about that.
Definitely.
I'd expect nothing less, Scott Allen.
And sorry, this is my last question, Emma, before I hand it back to you. Andrew, you were also on the tour. Are these tours worth it? Do you rate them?
Oh, 100%. Not only are they worth it for the caliber of the people that you're over there drinking with, but the caliber of experiences you get to have. You can easily rack up 6 or 7 distilleries in a really long day if you're a seasoned drinker like my brother. But when you go with Brock and you go with Scott, some of the experiences you get there are just second to none. The access to some of the industry legends is just amazing. We spent time with some really fantastic people doing some really fantastic things on the last tour that I'll never get to do any other time. So, I've done every distillery on the Bourbon Trail through Kentucky and most of Tennessee, and I still learned lots of new things on this tour. So it was a great time.
Good on you, legend. What a review. That's 5 stars. That sounds like a very strong 5 stars.
I think it might be a few more years before I hop on a tour, but I think it's totally worth it. Very jealous. I think I was watching Scott's videos and reels like every other day, and I was just like, I'm so jealous. But no. Alrighty. Let's move on to the final whiskey of the evening, I think.
Yeah.
So this is for Seelback's. I think I accidentally misspelled it in the reminder email. Seelback's a USA. Is this a bar?
Online bottler.
Online.
Local retailer with a small online presence.
Wow.
Gotcha. Be Andy to the punch there. I think Andy was gonna. Andy's just like taking it all in. I will say I always do the virtual tastings. Yeah, Yum.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys can see that, but I got very technical down in the bottom right of that page there with a giant yum. I mean, that goes for all of Old Foresters, really. But yeah, Emma, sorry, as you were saying.
No, yeah, I taste these whiskeys at the same time as everybody else as well because I like it to be my first impression as well, rather than like something I've thought about or um, really research. Because I think when you're having a whiskey at a bar or whatever, unless it's a bottle you already own, it is that beautiful first experience and that first interaction with it. So
Totally.
I always try and make it uh the same as you guys. And yes, Patrick, the Seelbacks is a famous hotel in Louisville. That is the venue that I'm thinking of because of the Seelback Classic Cocktail, which was like a brandy and sugar cube with bitters on it, and then topped up with champagne.
Oh,
Um,
stop.
it's actually really good. So yeah, Seelback cocktail. Craps all over a French
Wow,
75.
that's one of the most decadent ideas I think I've ever heard.
Yeah. It is beautiful. So, yeah, that's kind of why I was wondering. I was just like, oh, is it kind of like a bar exclusive? But no, it's a bottler exclusive for a retailer in the US.
Well, on that note as well, I mean, this is really our first encounter with something called single barrel strength. And my Jack Daniels hat comes on and off at different times, but I have to kind of reference Jack just because if you've seen those beautiful bottles in the shape of the single barrel select, those slightly kind of chunkier bottles with the gold label on front, that is our single barrel strength. And what that means is that once the distillation is done, we go straight into the maturation in the barrels. And once it comes, the whiskey comes out of that barrel, it goes straight into the bottle without even the tiniest bit of dilution. So there's a reason that I wanted to do the Seelbacks after we did Brock's barrel pick, and it's because this is the highest proof of the lot, and you don't really want to go from something as high. What have we got here? 63.45% ABV back into the Old Forester single barrel. Of course, keep a little bit in your glasses if you haven't polished them off, because it's great to go back and discover the different notes at different times. But this is a single barrel strength, so not a drop of water has been added. The bourbon has come straight out of the barrel at a very high proof, 126.9, and it's gone straight into the bottle. So it makes these products incredibly rare, number one, very expensive, number two, because as you can imagine, diluting a bourbon down to get it to that perfect flavor profile also allows you to stretch that bourbon across, more bottles and get a little bit more volume and sales across it. When you work with something like a single barrel strength, you're really the customer is getting every drop of that bourbon at the highest proof it is. So you're going to notice on your nose there's a higher ethanol content. It's going to be real hot on the palate. So if you want to have that first sip, grab a couple of drops of water, taste again. Just don't go nuts and add 15 mils because you might spoil it. But a couple of drops on this is really going to open it up after you've experienced it neat. So yeah, the flavor notes that I get from this one on the nose, pecan, like toasted walnuts. It's that really kind of those really rich dark style of nuts, like a walnut or a pecan. And behind that you've got on the palate, because I was a little bit cheeky, I was trying to cheekily have a sip, and then I said wow out loud. How you're supposed to say wow in your head, but I had a cheeky sip and I just couldn't help but
Inside
say wow.
voice, not outside
Exactly.
voice.
So behind the toasted pecan and walnuts, you get a sticky caramel, like a dark chocolate, and a real, I guess, sense of that charred oak. Charred oak really brings in that kind of like depth, contrast, spice. It's really beautiful, but it is not a shy bourbon by any stretch. So for anyone that's finding it too hot, a little bit of water is going to open it right up. I'm living for the comments coming through here, by the way. Someone said it's a firework.
It's a firework. It's a party in my mouth kind of vibes. But yeah, no.
Huge bourbon. Just huge.
Yeah, Rob's like not good at tasting notes, but yum. Yeah, it is. It is a chewy, chunky, like it really is that chewing on like a cookie or something that's got caramel toffee bits in it, and you just get it stuck in your teeth, and you're like,
Perfect. Yeah, little crunchy bits. It's like when you get an ice cream. I don't know if you guys are obviously down in Melbourne, but in Enmore we've got this beautiful gelato place called Cow and Moon, and in Cow and Moon they've got I think this affogato that's got these like sticky toffee bits in it, and as you're trying it, they kind of crunch and crack in your mouth. It's exactly what this is like. It's like just they're just popping in your mouth, and that real like rich toffee flavor just coats the entire thing. If you swing it around in the glass too, the legs just really slowly just start sinking back. This is a viscous whiskey. It's very thick with two C's.
Yeah, I think I loved Lawrence's comment. That's a chewy boy.
Mm,
Absolutely. It is chewy. Adam's getting salted
yeah.
caramel bomb.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Oof. Yeah, Michael,
Delightful.
it's bloody good. Definitely couldn't start with it though. Yeah, it's. I think like I'm a massive fan of those like higher proof American whiskeys just for that like viscous, chewy quality that they tend to have to them. And this is like a prime, incredible example of all of the
Mm.
things that I love about those cask strength bourbons.
Rob
Mm.
just jumped on and said, lovely finish. And, the screen, so that I can capture this beautiful Brown Forman bar behind me, my screen is actually quite far away. So I can't really see much of the comments, but I just saw one come up from Rob, lovely finish. And that's the thing, right? It's not necessarily always a mark of quality that a whiskey stays on your tongue for 10, 20 seconds, because if it's a horrible taste, you kind of want it to disappear as quick as possible. But with something like this that has so much flavor up front and so much punch, it's lovely to see those kind of caramel and fudge and toffee notes that just stay on your palate and just continue to coat your palate. It's got a really rich, silky finish. I'm actually going to go back to Brock's barrel pick too, because the heat is still on my tongue, but I think it'd be cool to kind of go back to one of the slightly lower ABVs just to kind of see what flavors come out as well.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think this is a great
Mm.
time to run the poll as well. So
Mm.
obviously the usual vote for your top two favorite whiskeys. Andy, you will be able to see how people are voting. It's like
Amazing.
watching races. It's so exciting. Don't spoil anything though.
All right.
Uh, but yeah, I like that last one was just a perfect nightcap, I think, for this incredible range, and it really emulates all those like big points. It has that big chewy toffee thing. It's got that like rice spice, um, brightness to it. It is, yeah, really fantastic. Um, but
It's quite entrancing to watch the poll live.
it
Obviously, I'm
is.
not going to speak about the results, but it's quite
It's so
interesting.
fun. I always think
I
of it
think
as you're like, come on, this one, come on.
it's like a day at the races, right? Like the Kentucky Derby. Um, but yeah, I think a good point to note as well is that when you get a single barrel strength, it really does kind of blow your palate up, and sometimes in a good way. Other times there are people that will find that a little bit too hot as well, but very appropriate to finish. And when I came back from that Seelback's single barrel strength to Brock's, completely changed the flavor, and it's just beautiful to get those like subtle flavors of the peanut brittle kind of coming back. And you get a lot more balance when you have a lower ABV. When you've got something that is, like the single barrel strength, it's intentionally skewed one way or the other, whether it's towards rye, whether it's towards spice or barrel interaction. You're intentionally allowing a whiskey to be that big because you're skewing towards a certain flavor. And that's why when you're doing a single barrel strength pick, specifically speaking to Jack Daniels, because it's the only time I've seen someone do a pick in our brands, you are picking the extreme of your own personality, whether it's you that likes really woody, charred notes, or whether it's you that likes the lighter fudge vanilla style. So it's really interesting to see where people's, palate sits. I think with Brock's as well, that's just, it's rich and it's subtle at the same time, which is a pretty amazing combination. Let's not forget we've got the 1910, and if you've got any of that, please go back to it, because you're almost going from Seelbach's through to Brock's, and then you're going down to old fine whiskey. So you're going to get very different, varied styles of that caramel, toffee, and fudge note.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think gosh, like we got full marks on answering the question. So I will end the poll and I will put in a little drum roll, please.
Wow, there you go.
And that is, you know what? I don't think normally like the first whiskey or second whiskey don't get as much love, but I think that the last three cask strength situations were just so just beyond explosively good that like it makes sense as to why the others are like, yeah, they're good, but oh my God, the last three really blew everyone away. Yeah, Adam's
Totally.
definitely sold on the 1910. Please bring more.
Yeah,
And
we're
also
doing our
wishes he had
best.
more. Yeah. But yeah, like Tom said, they were all good tonight. I think it's just that Australian palate for high strength is undeniable. But I think that is it from me.
I think
And
before we wrap, Emma, I just wanted to give a quick call out as well. He's hiding somewhere in his basement on the call here, but Benny Taus, who I work with at Brown Forman, he's been so instrumental in kind of helping put these barrel picks, home place visits, and obviously talking all things commercials and allocations with the team at Whiskey Hunt and the Whiskey List. So Benny, thank you so much for all the work you do in putting these things together. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. And of course, yeah, I'm just trying to embarrass you on a live virtual. Sorry, mate.
100%. And I think Ollie, yes, Glenn says time for the shop link to destroy Glenn's wallet. Ollie's got a link and some information about bottles, perhaps.
Yeah, code is WHA10. That's the link, 10% off, same price as we launched it. We held those 8 bottles back just for tonight. The Brock's picks always sell out within, we like to say 24 hours, but the last 3 or 4 have been like 4-6 hours. So,
goodness me, that's amazing.
Australian bourbon lovers, there's a demand for it, especially like the Old Forester. The Woodford Reserve you guys did recently as well went in 2 hours or a bit less as well. Like it's insanity, like the demand for good bourbon in Australia. So from our side, and on behalf of Brock as well, massive thanks to Brown Forman, the entire team over the years and today as well for just your continued support in helping us bottle some incredible whiskies, including these whiskies. So 7 to go, but yeah, thank you from our side.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think an awesome opportunity from my side too. It's really, can I just say, it's so peaceful in the office at this time. It's nice to kind of be in here and have a dram with no one else in here. But yeah, from our side, on behalf of myself and Ben, Ollie, Scott, Brock, Emma for hosting, you're fantastic. But thank you so much for the continued support of our brands, and obviously you guys are sharing the stories and sharing the love with our brands as well. So thank you for the ongoing support, and thank you for putting things like this on. 350. I don't know if any comments have been coming up on that, but 350 is an incredible number of these events that you've put on. So a massive round of applause from everyone watching. You guys are doing some incredible work. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. And thank you for being our extra wonderful special guest for the evening. I think when I sent out the first email, I was just like, Andy's one of the loveliest, one of my favorite brand ambassadors in the industry. And I think, for anyone in the crowd who didn't already know you tonight, you proved why we adore you so much. So thank you so much.
Very kind of you. It's sort of like
much.
I'm the second choice to Linus, but Linus, he is the absolute master of all things bourbon, malts and Diplomatico rum. But he was actually driving to the snow to spend a few days there, so he was unable to do this event with you guys. And then he got halfway there. I don't know if he's comfortable with me sharing this, but he got halfway there and the roads were closed due to snow and ice. So he had to drive back, and he couldn't have hosted because he didn't have the samples yet. But yeah, massive. I'm missing listening to Linus on this. So I hope I've done the event as much justice as he would have.
Yeah, 100%. Well, between you and the little asleep collection of kittens, we've
Alfie 2.0.
Yeah, Alfie 2.0. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining us at another virtual tasting. The kittens, Alfred and Danny, say goodbye. And we will hopefully catch you at the next one. Andy, Ben, if you wanted to stick around
Sure.
for a little bit, but thank you everyone else for joining, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks
Bye.
everyone at home. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. It's been a lot of fun.